My name is Joshua, and I am the Tribune. Spiritual warfare is so important because it is the way we battle Satan. And I've learned a very important principle that God loves. It's the strategy of extra. Doing extra always makes sure you're covered. Giving it your all. If the enemy comes and attacks you, then sometimes it's not the best thing to fight him. Sometimes it's better just to do extra of what you were doing right to show him two things. One, you're not going to stop me. Two, when you come, it's going to cost you because I'm going to do extra. This is an important principle that God loves. When I was a child, we had this team, a sports team, and we won many championships. The reason wasn't because we were such great players. The reason is because the coaches, our coaches, were relentless winners, and they always did extra. They always made us do extra. So that when other people started burning out, we never burned out. We were always still standing. They did something very interesting that a lot of people didn't understand. They would never, ever take out the starting players until the very last second of the game. It was a really, really crazy thing. Even if we were up by 50 points, they would leave the best players in the entire game and just keep pummeling this team until they break and give up. And then after they break and give up, we continue to pummel them. And then the bench would come in at the very last second. Now, if you look at that, and you're somebody who just like loves your child or something like that, you won't understand the strategy. Because if your child's on the bench and they never get to play, then of course you'd be very upset. And many parents tried to fight this, but nobody ever succeeded. Because it was a strategy of extra. Now, this is also a carnal strategy, but it really comes from God. It originates with God. He likes to make sure everything is handled way, way, way more than it has to be, so that there's no dispute on that He's the best, that He's the strongest, that He loves us so much. He will even take lashings, just like Jesus Christ Himself took so much extra just to make a point. Really, how much He loves us. And then He died, rose Himself from the dead. All power. Now, when we're doing our work with God as builders, and we're generals, and we're getting trained up to make beautiful things with God, to astound the world, during your preparation time, it's important to remember this principle, because things are going to come. Things are going to come try to afflict you. People are going to come try to afflict you and stop you. People are going to try to discourage you. The enemy's going to come and try to wreck things. Okay, God's going to give you prototypes. But the thing is that if you continue to do extra of what God told you to do and make sure you exhaust it completely, then you cannot lose in these situations. You will come out with treasure. That's what we're after. Now, the enemy gets very discouraged when we do this because he's in a very tough position. His job is to come and test us and he's going to come afflict us. And he does. But we have to make sure he pays for this. We have to make sure that we do this in all areas. This is another reason why I really can't stand under any flag that is against racism or anything like that. Any human flag, Black Lives Matter, I can't stand under those flags because they don't do enough extra. God loves extra. So instead of doing what we did 50 years ago, We need to have extra strategies that cover many areas. And only God can do that. This is how it is in all different types of situations. When you are getting attacked, it's better to do extra on the good work you're doing and continue the strategy that you have. If you don't have a strategy with God, you're screwed. Continue the strategy, pummel it in completely, despite the attack. Not stop and deal with the attack. That discourages the enemy. That's why every time the enemy would come, for example, with things like discrimination, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about blacks, I'm talking about Asians, I'm talking about everybody. When the enemy would come and try to come and stop us, we really should just do extra with the right thing with God, and it wouldn't even matter. And it would discourage the enemy. And he'd be like, well, I don't even know what to do. When I hit him, they do extra. If I don't hit them, they're doing the strategy. How can you win? Can't kill them. What do I do? Got to bow down. That's what you got to do. You have to bow down. There's nothing that can be done. This is another reason why a lot of people, and even situations, this comes in situations too, but people, when they come and attack us, they should see that we just get more excellent. That is a scary thing. That's why when someone attacks you, sometimes the strategy is to be very kind to them. Because that is a shocking, shocking thing. Sometimes you have to deal with them very harshly, very directly, and then be kind to them the next day. This is something that you can only get from God training you how to do this, because you can't have emotions when you do these kind of things. That is a strategy of extra. Sometimes you have to completely ignore things. This is another form of the strategy of doing extra. I have no problem being quiet. Let me tell you, I don't have an itch to respond to anything. I don't respond, I act. You know why? Because God acts. He doesn't have to respond to anything. So if we're dealing with the God of the universe who acts, he puts things to motion, the enemy reacts to him, then why aren't we doing extra? Why aren't we trying to do extra to follow that strategy? Because doing something in advance is doing extra. Because you're saying, I believe so much that this is going to be fixed, that I'm going to work extra right now while it's not fixed. Because this strategy is so powerful that I don't even need to address the problem right now. All I need to do is do extra preparation. This is a strategy that nobody can stop you. Not Satan, not people. You can't stop yourself if you do this. Even if you make a mistake, and let's say you just go off the path a little bit, and you're like, oh man, I made that mistake. I got to do extra. You come back to the table and like, listen, I'm doing double. You can't lose. God's very pleased with that. This also takes faith. Faith is very important in this situation. On top of that, you have to have a relationship with God, because you can do extra in the wrong direction. Many have done that and are doing that now. Overdrive in the wrong direction is actually foolish. It doesn't make any sense. That's why we have to check in with the counselor, because he will teach us how to do extra in the right strategy, so that whatever happens to you, you will continue to push the mission forward. That's what he's asking. So when the enemy comes to you and he starts to afflict you, he should already know that you will be doing double of what you even thought you're going to do. Now it works in your favor. Sometimes God will even allow the enemy to come in knowing that it will make you do extra of the strategy, which keeps you on schedule, which works in your good throughout the entire time. Because not only are you continuing to be on schedule, you are completing the mission of preparation and the final mission, which is coming for the commission that you've been given. But you're also getting built on the inside to know how to do spiritual warfare and to know how to control your emotions. Because you have to be able to control your emotions to do extra. It takes relentless focus. It takes a wisdom that only you can get from God. Because in order to do extra, and in order to fight strategically in that direction, in the correct direction, while you're getting attacked, you have to know which direction you're supposed to be in that moment. You have to know exactly what the enemy's after. This brings me to my last point. The enemy is after certain things when he attacks you. Satan doesn't just attack for no reason. He doesn't just he's a limited resource. He doesn't have that much energy. He can only be at one place at one time, and all of the demons under him can only be in one place. They're not omnipresent. So they have to be very strategic with where they put their manpower. So if you're getting afflicted by the enemy, you need to know that he actually wants something specific out of that situation from you. So that's where this strategy comes into play. Because if he wants something specific, if he wants to take you down and destroy a certain part of whatever you're doing, whatever God's doing through you and for you and in you, then that means you need to find that thing and make sure it's done. I don't care how much extra you have to do to make sure it's completed. And your focus is what is the extra. Your focus on completing it and having victory in that area. That is what God is pleased with. And God backs that. He loves it. This takes discernment. This takes being able to sense what the fight is about. You cannot fight anything if you don't know what the fight is over. You can't have victory in that. For example, let's say you're preparing with God. You're doing beautiful work with God. And suddenly your car breaks down. Now, a lot of people, when they go in and they're just going to start the car and go to the grocery store, okay? They would go into this overdrive frenzy of trying to make sure everything's back to normal without checking in with God. Maybe it's not supposed to be fixed that day. Maybe it's supposed to be fixed tomorrow. But if you don't check in with God and something breaks down in your life, by the way, a car is very, very banal compared to what I'm really thinking. If you limit this to a car, then I don't even know what to say about that. That means that you really are going to miss the point. So, let's go higher while I use this car example. That car that broke down should really maybe be fixed next week. But because you were so frustrated and didn't check in with God and went into overdrive to try to get everything back to normal, you don't realize that you were just going to the grocery store to get a couple things. You already have a full pantry. You have the pantry's full. The fridge you already have. You were just going to get just a couple things that were just sporadic. But that day, God was going to talk to you about something so mighty. And there was a window for that thing because it needed to get done in rhythm. So you missed it because you went into overdrive in a place he didn't even want you to go. All he wanted you to do is sit for the next couple of days with him, let the car sit outside, and fix it when he says to fix it. Now, in that situation, the enemy's not after the car. He doesn't care. What does he need it for? Does he really care about that car? Why? No, he's after your relationship with God, the creativity you guys are doing. He's after trying to make sure that you can't hear. He's after trying to make sure your vision's blurry so that you miss it and don't even know it. It just goes right over your head and you had no idea. And you get the car fixed and you just move on. Okay, God, now we're going to talk about it. He's like, well, we missed it. Now we got to wait for another few months because the window's gone. I had a window for this. There's another rhythm where I'm on now. Now you got to find this rhythm. But the proper way to deal with that, first, before you go fix the car just off of just being in a frenzy, a panic attack, you need to check in with God, and God will say, leave it. I have something to tell you. And he will come speak to you. And you will get what you need to get in rhythm. And then he will break the rhythm and say, now the rhythm is to go fix this car because we're going to need that. We're going to need that for something I'm going to actually ask you to do. Because I'm about to start drawing with you, you need to go get some pencils. But not yet. Because you can't get the pencils from the store until you know what you're doing. And you can only get that from God. So in that situation, doing extra would be ignore the situation that has come against you, check in with God, make sure you get his instructions, and go overdrive in that place to make sure that you get what he wants. This will frustrate the enemy. And he'll start realizing, oh, I can't attack that. That area doesn't even matter. I can't attack that area. There are many forms of this. If you keep this in mind and remember this strategy of doing extra, checking in with God first, then you will complete your preparation faster and you will have a very, very clear mind and spirit. And the enemy will be very frustrated with you. And the attacks will slow down. Because what is there to attack? They'll have to slow down. So I want to say something. Maybe the enemy attacks so hard with racism, so much discrimination in so many areas because we react like puppets. It's predictable. We are so predictable that it's a button that he could just press and we'll just do whatever he wants. That's why we need to check in with God about these kind of things. I am a black American. I've faced racism myself. But I don't let it take my mind away from what my mission is. Because I've noticed that when I did do that, I got more affliction. This is a very powerful principle. Find God's strategy. Do extra as a spiritual warfare tactic, and you cannot lose. Hail Jehovah.